Welcome back. Our Saturday talking point is all about a certain student who accidentally received 40 million rand. I'd like such accidents in my life in her account earlier this year. But in less than 3 months, she spent 800,000 rand before the error was reversed. I mean, it may seem funny, but it's quite a serious story. This morning, we're discussing student spending patterns and challenges in the light of what seems to be an extremely irresponsible move. Earlier this week, my colleague Vuyo Mvoko spoke to legal expert Aslan Mosaji about the consequences of her behavior.
When you receive money like this, which you know you do not deserve, can you get away with saying, well, it's in my account and I'll spend it whichever way I want to spend it?
Well, the student can be in serious trouble because the law is that if you receive a sum of money, knowing that you're not entitled to that money, and you then utilize that money, you could be guilty of theft. So she could be charged criminally. And if successfully prosecuted, she could end up in jail. Over and above that, there could be a civil claim either by the university or the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, depending on where the law is currently sitting. There could be a civil claim against her for the money that has already spent.
Now, what sort of say she was like, no, but it was in my account and I thought, well, I just received a windfall. And she says, well, I don't know where the law stands on this. The money, given that the money was in my account, that for me was enough to say I should spend her money. Can she use that kind of a defense in a court of law? Will that stand?
I think the difficulty is the facts of the case. She was entitled, I think, to 1,400 rand. She ends up with 14 million rand. I think under those circumstances, to think that she was entitled to the full 14 million rand is going to be a hard sell, and no court is really going to buy that particular argument.
What should a person do when something like this happens?
I think you need to inform the relevant authorities. So in this particular case, you would have expected her to go to the university administration, say, my account has been credited with this sum of money. I'm pretty sure I'm not entitled to the money. What do I do? And I'm sure that the problem would have immediately been rectified and the funds would have been reversed.
Does it matter that this was part of the loan that she has or she's got from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme? In other words, which would then mean that she would have, as the scheme and the university have said, she would then have to repay that amount.
Absolutely should have to repay that amount. I mean, whether it's a loan, even if it's not classified as a loan, she would still have been unjustifiably enriched to the extent of the funds that she's already spent, and there would be a claim against her based on unjustified enrichment.
Does the law even vaguely take into account her unique set of circumstances, given the fact that, for example, the fact that she needed a loan like as little as 1,400 rands to actually go through her schooling means that she is in a desperate situation, and if you tempt someone like that with those amounts of money, chances are that they will grab the opportunity with both hands. Does that sort of mitigate some?
I think we've got to distinguish between whether she'd be held liable by a court for the money and whether she'd be in a position to repay the money. So you've got to distinguish between whether there would be a judgment against her and then enforcement of the particular judgment. But I think there'd be little sympathy for her in these circumstances, particularly if the facts are that she spent the money buying cell phones and, funding a party.
Which of course do happen to be the dream of a student. May not matter much to you and me.
Well, welcome back, and let's delve a little bit deeper into that story now. So the legal experts, as you've just heard, say that the lady must pay back the money. I wonder how long it will take for her to do just that. But this incident is a good opportunity, I think, to talk about the money challenges that students face and how they can take more responsibility for the little money that they do have. I'm joined now in studio, in our Cape Town studios, by spokesperson for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, Kagiso Mamabolo, as well as in our Johannesburg studio, Bloomberg Financial journalist and former ENCA colleague, Arabile Kumete, as well as Floris Slabbert. He is the director for Exponent Financial Services. Gentlemen, such a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for your time. I don't even know where to begin, but perhaps let's start with some context. Floris, you are the equivalent of the company that is sort of a go-between. NSFAS releases the funds to an organization such as yourself. You then distribute to the university or to the student. Perhaps give us a bit of context.
I think our role would be in more cases where we actually guide the financial institution or the actual student itself, whereby we then make sure that they spend their money wisely, or ideally according to the contract, specifically in this case, where the money has to be spent at certain locations or for certain purposes. So ideally that's where we would form part in this, but ideally on the financial planning platform.
Kagisho, let's quickly go to you in Cape Town, because there's been a lot of he said, she said around this. I mean, in studio, we're debating where the error went wrong. I mean, was it the university that paid out the 14M? Was it the service provider? In your understanding, what went wrong?
Thank you very much. I think the matter is very simple. And I think if we read the statement that was issued by the Walter Sisulu University, and the statement that was issued by the service provider, it's quite clear. The service provider has taken responsibility for the error, and they've gone further to say that they will resolve this issue with the university and with us. What we must make it very clear here is we haven't signed an agreement with the service provider. In as far as we are concerned, in our books, we don't know them. So the error happened between the university and the service provider. What we can account for as NSFAS, it is the amount we gave to the university for the student, and we gave her the right amount which she signed for.
Tell us a little bit about the whole process, because it sounds to me a little bit like the SASSA debacle, where there are middlemen involved here. In NSFAS, does it have the capacity to make direct payouts? If not, why not?
Well, the earpiece is a bit loud. If you could help to adjust it, but I'll try to answer your question. This is how we work as NSFAS. We work with universities because previously they've been running this process for many years. So NSFAS is trying to take over this process so that we can disperse the money directly. The money that goes for fees, we gave it to university. If it's accommodation on campus, we give it to the university. But if it is money that involves food and books, we want to transfer that money to the student using our own system, which we call NSFAS. The reason we are in this debacle with this university is because Walter Sisulu University is in a process of coming on board on the NSFAS disbursement system of NSFAS. Therefore, at the moment, we sign an agreement with them that we give them the money and they will use their own means and their own processes of disbursing that into the student's account.
Thank you very much for that. Let's see if we can work on your earpiece. Meanwhile, Arabile, I'm going to come to you in just a moment. I want to come back to you, Mr. Slabbert. My only concern is that it took a jealous co-student to out this particular young lady and say, I think there's a bit of a discrepancy here. How many other incidents do we possibly not know about, that we'll never know about? Is this something that could be more common than we think?
I think definitely the companies and all parties concerned should be put under proper scrutiny. You have to look at your checks and balances. I mean, there's too much human intervention at this stage, or human capability at this. You have to upload and automate as far as possible to make sure that this is a finger problem, in my opinion. Someone actually typed in the wrong opinion. It can't be an Excel spreadsheet that pulled incorrectly into a bank that did the disbursement. There's definitely not proper systems in play here. And I think the companies that have been allowed to partake in this actual process has to be put under scrutiny and actually just partake and say, listen, these are our books, these are our processes, let's reevaluate and make sure that it doesn't happen. And as you said yourself, how many other incidents are there that we haven't picked up on?
Arabile, you're a money man. Now, let's play devil's advocate for a moment here. We know it's wrong. She should never take the money. You know, she should have declared, etc., etc. My colleagues and I were talking about, you know, what you would do when if you had that lump sum. Yeah. Others said I'd be out of the country in a flash.
Possibly.
I said I would have either bought my family a home or you buy a car or somehow make that money grow, etc. You know, okay, we're not going to talk about the morality of it all, but how should she have spent that money if she absolutely had to? She blew it on parties and weaves and expensive alcohol and.
Let me explain it from a point of view of somebody who was in a similar situation. I say that not because somebody unlawfully put or, irregularly put money into my account, but I had a bursary, all right? And in my first year, I had never seen 20,000 Rand, and that was the first amount that came into my bank account in January. And they'd said to me that I'm supposed to use this for my books. My studies would be paid for, but this was out of residence expenses that I would need for 6 months. But 20,000 Rand was pretty much gone in the first.
Yeah, your age.
Exactly. I think what needs to happen at that point in time is there isn't sufficient guidance. I think from a high school point of view already, we start off with the basis of knowing what a budget is, but knowing why I need it, but not knowing why I need it, rather. So the whole emphasis here should have been on a point of saying, okay, I've got this much money. And even if she does use it unlawfully, right, and she does use more than she's supposed to, fact of the matter is she should have covered what she needed to have for university first. And then after that, lo and behold, you would be tempted to do anything else with it. But I think the first situation is that obviously she didn't tell anybody. She just decided, I'm going to do this and keep this for myself. Whereas the advice and the experience of somebody who may be older, maybe in a more financial sector, would have been able to have told her that perhaps just look at getting your fees right first, or getting your books in, getting everything that you need, even if it's an extra calculator that you may not need in future. But it is. But at
least when you have to pay back the money, you're paying back for something you realize.
Exactly.
Because she is going to have to pay back the money. How does she get out of that debt?
Well, essentially, it's going to be a tough one, right? Because, according to bank law, technically, when the money is paid into a person's particular account, that money belongs to the bank, not yourself, right? Until you're given, you're able to use it at demand. So this is a totally different story, because this is not money that is actually owed to you. So you're essentially a thief then under law. So in this case, they're saying, yes, you can pay us back. And the difficulty comes in that just imagine trying to pay off a house of 1 million Rand. How much is the bond repayment on that? Right? At least 10,000 Rand minimum. Now you have a student who hasn't even started working yet, who has no consideration for where she might find a job, considering South Africa has a 27.7% unemployment rate. Where might she get the job? Then from there, she already has a debt of 800,000 Rand. So the difficulty from here is that her situation is bound to spiral out of control, and it may be very, very difficult to get herself out of it. And she may be in debt for quite a long time.
Sure, I can just imagine. It looks like something that, is funny. And I know social media has been taking the mickey out of it, but it's quite serious. And we'll continue to unpack it in just a moment. We look at money challenges that students face in the wake of that 14 million Rand payment scandal to an Eastern Cape University student. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thanks again for joining us. As discussed, legal experts say the young lady that got 14 million Rand and spent a little under 1 million Rand has to pay back the money. I wonder how long it will take for her to do just that. The incident, however, has provided for us an opportunity to really focus on youngsters and the challenges that they face when they're in varsity and have to manage their funds and bursaries and the like. In Cape Town, we're joined by the spokesperson for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, Kagisho Mamabolo, and in Johannesburg, we have Bloomberg financial journalist and former ENCA colleague Arabile Kumete, as well as Floris Slabete. He is the director for Exponent, I should say, financial services there. Kagisho, let's perhaps go back to you there in the mother city and speak about the lessons learned. What has this taught NSFAS, and what are you doing to prevent similar incidents from occurring in future?
Well, this was a very, very good lesson for us. In fact, if it has done anything, was to pressurize us as a scheme to fully roll out our SBAC system, so that in the coming years, there's no university that is distributing allowances to our students through third-party agents. Therefore, our management is really, really working hard to ensure that from next year we have all our universities on the SBAC system. But it doesn't end there. It also tells us that our students that comes from the most poorest communities, when they get to university, they start to see money for the first time in those amounts. Therefore, financial education is very, very important. And as a financial institution, it is our responsibility to provide a little bit of consumer education. Take them through what the terms and conditions of the loan agreement form that NSFAS gives you to sign is about, specifically where there are items such as if you utilize this money for any other thing that is not related for your studies or a stipulated amount, gives NSFAS the power to actually withdraw your funding. It is there in the terms and conditions. Things such as if you are found to be transferring your money to third parties or trying to cash it, NSFAS can immediately cancel your allowances, even block you. So it gives us good lessons to say we need to engage our students a little bit more further. We need to give them financial education, and they must also know that this money we give them, we expect them in the near future when they are working to give it back so that they can pay for more students, just like they are receiving it from other students who have gone through the route.
I think we'll come back to that point in just a moment, but very quickly, the consequences now. You know, what are the repercussions that will be faced by the errant individual, the employee, and maybe even the third party that is to blame for this debacle?
Well, we are still waiting to hear a report from Walter Sisulu, and really we are putting pressure on them that that report must come out, because we need to account to our investors as soon as possible. At the moment, we can't tell our investors any other thing without that report, but we can reassure them that from what we got from Walter Sisulu and Intellimal is that the 14 million really is it's safe. It's not really our money. That's what we are getting from them. But with a student, we have her loan agreement form which she signed, and she had signed and stipulated what she's getting this year and what she's going to get until she completes her studies. I think the question is, has she violated those terms and conditions of the agreement which she has signed with us? And another question is, has the university violated the agreement that we signed with them in terms of the disbursement amount?
Arabile, you know, I think what Kagisho touched on is very important. It is a loan. And sometimes when the kids see, you know, 20,000 Rand, as you said, and they think, oh my gosh, I've made it. Others have to fulfill their, quote, black tax duties. Yeah. They start extending the houses at home. They start buying groceries for their parents. So it's not all about the weaves and the fun time. But they have to pay this money back. And by the time they go into employment, they're debt-ridden, you know, and they're oppressed by the cycle that continues.
You're quite right, and I think that's one of the biggest things facing us right now, right? So yes, fine, we have the essence of black tax, and an element that I think a lot of black families cannot really run away from at present in particular. Then, as you say, you have that entire element of saying to yourself, you've never seen this amount of money before. And the most important thing, as Kagiso said, is financial education. Yeah. And this is a part where I'm extremely passionate. I think from the age of the first time you can hold money, you should already be taught as to what it actually means to you, what certain terms mean. And I think that is the hindrance, is that we've blocked out the economic part of this country, that the understanding of certain elements of our economy are very difficult to put forward. Somebody not so long ago asked me what fiscal means. And technically, fiscal is just money. And all it is government money, right? But now to understand that and help somebody else understand that is putting it very difficultly, or rather in a difficult manner. So I think financial education is the biggest issue here. And sadly, yes, she does have to pay back the loan, which is a difficult part we can't run away from.
Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time and your input. We'll have to leave it there for the time being, but social media can be very mean, juxtaposing the before and the after picture. So before 14 million, after 14 million, I suppose the third installment will be after the 14 million is gone and you have to pay back the money. But yeah, this is a conversation that will continue to make headlines as the story develops. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for joining us. A quick ad break. We'll be back with more in just a moment.